Welcome to the Practitioner-Scholar, a Penn Chief Learning Officer podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Marie Aird, and I'm a current Penn Chief Learning Officer or PennCLO student. PennCLO is an executive doctoral program at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. It focuses on leadership and organizational learning and development in public and private sectors. As a scholar practitioner program, it combines academic research with workplace application. Today's podcast will focus on leadership authenticity. Our guest is Dr. Mark Kaestner, who is an alum of the PennCLO program and the Vice President of Talent Management, Learning, Belonging, Inclusion and Diversity, People Analytics at Boyle Corporation. Welcome, Dr. Kaestner.
Thank you, Lisa Marie. And feel free to call me Mark.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I must start off by saying I love your title. It makes a statement about people.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem. Well, let's start by hearing about your journey. And also, if you can include, what inspired you to pursue an advanced degree at the UPenn-CLO program?
Yeah, it's a unique journey. I always knew that I wanted to get my advanced degree since I was an undergrad. So it wasn't really a matter of if, it was kind of a matter of when. And it took a long time. It was much later in my career, but I felt that I'm a lifelong learner and there was lots of things I wanted to experience in the corporate world. I had lots of different roles that afforded me the opportunity to really grow and to really stretch. And I reached a point where I felt that the PennCLO program fueled that deep curiosity about the intersection of a lot of the work that I had done through my career as it focused on leadership and learning and organizational development. And to feed that lifelong learner, I feel I have that growth mindset. I wanted to, seek a professional doctorate program, and the PennCLO program really filled that need. And so, it also afforded the opportunity to bring, as you mentioned earlier, a very diverse set of individuals from lots of different segments of the work, but profit, nonprofit, consulting. And I knew that would allow me to have that opportunity to really grow and expand and to learn from other practitioners. And then you put in that perfect blend of research, and it was the right mix to really take, I felt my career and my personal development to the next level.
I like it. Beautiful mix. Great words. So let's just dive in, because we're here to talk about leadership authenticity. How would you define authenticity in leadership?
Yeah, there's lots of definitions and lots of research in this area, and lots of individuals have a very distinct point of view. The way I look at authenticity in leadership is about being true to oneself, or being true to your values, your beliefs, and your personality while leading others, because leading others is a privilege, right? And as a leader, we need to embody integrity, honesty, and respect. And I think that is a core element of authenticity. An authentic leader is also very transparent, but consistent and honest in their interactions, making sure that their words align with what their actions are. And if you take a few things out of that definition, specifically honesty, trust, vulnerability, I think Brené Brown says it really well. Vulnerability plays a key role because authentic leaders aren't afraid to show their weaknesses or their failures or how they've learned. You're willing to expose yourself. And that understanding helps foster, deeper connections with your teams. And when you create that trust and genuineness and are committed to that and leading with integrity, even when decisions are tough. And also another scholar in this area, Frances Fry, she, brings up the concept around how you build trust, and really emphasizes that it's about leading with your whole self, which in turn creates this environment where others feel safe to do the same thing. So to me, in a nutshell, authenticity is really about being true to yourself and leading with that honesty, integrity, and building trust with your teams.
Wow, what a powerful statement. And I must say, I pulled out of that leadership is a privilege. That really spoke to me. And I really appreciate it. Now, let's go into some strategies that leaders can use to build the trust that you talked about and foster quality relationships with their teams.
Yeah, I think that there's several strategies that you as a leader can use. I want to be careful about using the word strategy because it makes it feel like they're tactics. But I think that these are things that as a leader, they're like a muscle that you need to actually exercise every day to be really good at it. And one of those strategies is about open and honest communication. As a leader, we need to prioritize transparent communication. We need to share both successes and challenges, and we need to build trust with our teams and that we show that we're approachable and truthful. Another characteristic or strategy that feeds from that is you also want to be reliable and you also want to be consistent. And what that means is that you follow through on what you say you're going to do. You're consistent in your actions. You demonstrate dependability because this is key to building trust. Even if you think about regular relationships that we have in our day to day or in our personal life, if you're not dependable, if you're not consistent, if you're not open in your communication, those relationships fail. And it's no different than having relationships with your team in the professional environment. I'd say the third strategy, and I'll be honest, it's the one that I have to work on and struggle with, is active listening. Because personally, it's like I'm always processing in my head what is going to be kind of the next response. And when you do that, you're not in the moment and you're not actively listening. And a lot of leaders struggle with this. And so you need to make a genuine effort to really be in the moment, to listen, to hear concerns, ideas, and feedback. It's important you don't have, as a leader, you don't have all the answers. That's why you put yourself in a position where you surround yourself with a team that augments all of the areas that you're not as strong on. So that is what makes a powerful team. So you need to make sure that individuals on your team feel valued, you're leveraging their strengths and showing respect and considering their perspectives. And then the fourth area is around empathy and support. You want to have a genuine interest. If you don't have a genuine interest in your team, then leadership becomes very transactional. Also, even in our personal lives, sometimes you'll hear comments around relationships where it feels like I'm the person always giving and I'm not receiving anything. And it becomes a very transactional relationship. And that doesn't have trust and vulnerability and meaning. And so you also want to be able to have that with your professional relationship. So it's important for leaders to be empathetic and supportive because that creates that positive and trusting team culture. And then the last one I think is really important, and you have to adjust this to the individuals on your team. It's about recognition and appreciation. And the reason I say that you have to adjust that to individuals on your team, individuals appreciate and want recognition in different ways. Some people like more visible recognition. Some prefer to be more silent, but we all want to be recognized for the contributions and the knowledge and the skills that we bring. And we want to be celebrated for our achievements. And this helps to build that cohesive team. So those are several strategies that I feel help build those authentic relationships and are important in building a high-performing team.
Love it. I love repeating things. So because it really gets ingrained in me and I hopefully ingrained in others. So you mentioned open and honest communication, clear and transparent communication, reliability and consistency, really doing as you should always and not deviating, just being consistent so that you can build that trust. Active listening. I think I have to work on that as well. Because you really do want others to feel valued and heard. Empathy and support, being empathetic, showing that you really care and building that culture. And lastly, recognition, or not lastly, because I'm sure there's more, but a focus on recognition and appreciation. And I like what you said, that really looking at it through the person, because everyone wants a different type of recognition, or I should say, everyone may not feel the same way. Some people are quiet and reserved and wouldn't gel with that fanfare, while others may want that fanfare and say, hey, I'm here, recognize me, see me. So I appreciate that. And it shows the value of the person. So I really appreciate those strategies. So I know along with those strategies, we talked earlier about a framework. So how would you outline a framework for authenticity in leadership?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think if I was to think, or thinking of the framework, the foundation of that framework is around self-awareness. And it's the foundation. It's where leaders deeply understand their value system, their strengths, and their areas for growth. And sometimes I get the question, well, if you're being your authentic self, and let's say somebody goes that they're a bully, that's not an excuse for being inappropriate behavior or and passing that off as you're being authentic, right? And it goes back to some of the critical things around, being genuine, being trustworthy, being honest. And so you really do need to understand your own strengths and your own areas of opportunity. And what are those things that you need to work on? And so it starts with that self-awareness. And then there's transparency. And this involves, an intentionality in how you interact with others. It's about your decisions, the feelings that you have, ensuring that your actions are aligned with your stated values. And it's about being genuine in your interactions. People can pick up very quickly when you're being fake, or when you're not being genuine, or when you don't have an interest in them. And I think that that's why transparency is really important. And it encompasses that genuineness that you need in your interactions to really build strong relationships. And as I mentioned earlier, I think consistency is also very important as part of the framework, because consistency is, steady, leadership. They know what they're going to get. I imagine we can probably think of a moment, or our listeners can think of a time where they, probably had a leader or a friend or someone in their sphere where it's like, ooh, who's going to show up today? And it's like, is it going to be this person, or is it going to be, this other person? And that's not being consistent. And so you want to maintain your leadership presence, and you want to reinforce that because that builds trust with your team. And being consistent in those relationships shows that you're reliable and trustworthy. And then we mentioned it before, there's this concept of vulnerability. And vulnerability doesn't mean like opening up and exposing your whole self. You want to bring your whole self, but, I always say this to individuals: when we talk about bringing your whole self to work, it's a personal decision. That's what do you want to bring? But we need to create an environment in the workplace, or even in our, personal lives, where you can feel that you can bring whatever of your whole self that you want to bring. And that leads to that vulnerability. So it allows leaders to admit when they don't know all the answers. They can seek input, collaboration from others. It strengthens team cohesion. So when you put self-awareness, transparency, consistency, and vulnerability together, to me, that really forms that authenticity, because it really allows you to create that environment where you can be very authentic and bring your whole self to whatever situation or context you find yourself in. And in the absence of those things, I think you see individuals cover or retreat. And again, it goes, and what I mean by retreat is that the interaction again becomes more of a transaction. It's like, we need to complete something. So let's, you do X, I do Y. And it leads to an outcome, and it lacks that depth that you want to have.
Taking notes and just listening to your nuggets. And what I'm hearing is ensure that you're not developing a transactional relationship. And you do that by knowing who you are, building that self-awareness, being intentional with transparency, walking your walk and talking your talk and being consistent, and opening yourself up not to expose yourself, but to show your strength, show your realness by being vulnerable. Great framework. I'm really enjoying this topic, but I want to kind of pull back to UPenn and your time in the CLO program. And let's talk about your dissertation topic. What is it, and how has it influenced how you show up as a leader today?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I think a lot of doctoral students go through the journey where I had probably, 6 or 7 ideas, and it's difficult to narrow it down. And then one of the things that the faculty and the professors do a really nice job of doing is really to help you hone into, what do you have passion about? And as you probably can tell, I have quite a bit of passion around authenticity and leadership and building high performing teams, and what does that look like in an organizational context. So I decided to really narrow down my dissertation topic around the relationship, or the nature of the relationship between leaders and their teams. And I looked at that through the lens of authenticity and employee engagement. And so in a nutshell, what I looked at was 2 different groups of leaders. And one particular group of leaders, through data that I had collected, I knew were perceived as driving high engagement within their teams, and they were perceived as authentic leaders. And then I had another group where I looked at and specifically chose, based on their levels of engagement that they were driving in their teams, and they were not perceived as authentic. So I had 2 different groups that I looked at. One group was a group of leaders that drove engagement within their teams. So they were perceived as driving engagement and developing a high performing team. And also they were perceived as authentic. And so I used several different measures to gather that data. And then I also looked at a group that had lower engagement and also were not perceived as authentic. And that created the dichotomy where I could really look at the nature of the relationships. What was unique about the group that was driving engagement and was perceived as authentic versus those leaders that were not driving as engagement? And what I found was supportive of what we've talked about today. You saw leaders' engagement and were perceived as authentic as really being very open and honest and clear in their communications. They were consistent. They were collaborative. They were active listeners. They were empathetic, and they had strong personal relationships with members of their team that were very genuine, and they were perceived as taking an interest. They knew if they had a team member that had kids, they knew their kids' names. So there was this nature of the relationship that encompassed those critical strategies that we shared earlier that you want to embody as a leader. And they also recognized and appreciated the contributions of those teams. It is disappointing to say, but we did find it that leaders that were not as authentic and did not drive levels of engagement. I had one particular individual that I was talking to in some of the one-on-one conversations that I was having, in gathering the data that described their leader as a narcissist and as being very transactional, didn't have a deep interest in their, what I would consider well-being. And that's unfortunate because, as we talked earlier, leading a team is a privilege, right? It is a privilege that is entrusted to leaders by the organization. And it's important for us to set a vision and then create an environment where individuals can do their best work and bring their best self. So, Lisa Marie, to answer the second part of your question around how does it influence me as a leader today, I really try to implement those strategies. I think going through the dissertation process and speaking to so many leaders and gathering all of the data and then looking at that from so many different perspectives to see, what I could learn. But I feel like the PennCLO program accomplished its objectives, which was to make me a better practitioner, but also through the lens of research and being a scholar. And it helped me grow as an individual. And I feel that I came out through the experience being a better leader. But I also feel that leadership is a lifelong journey. It's never finished. It's like a painting that always has to be retouched, or there's something new that's being added. And so, although I feel I've learned a lot, I still have a lot more to learn as it relates to leading and developing high-performing teams and organizations.
Your words are an inspiration and motivation to get me through my journey that I still have left. So thank you for your words and the information that you're providing. So we're going to move on to a fun question. If you were to write a fortune cookie message about authentic leadership, what would it say?
That's a tough question. I would say, as I'm opening up the fortune cookie and having the little white piece of paper scroll, that hopefully it would say, as it relates to authentic leadership, that you would lead with your heart, stay true to your values, and the trust you build will become your greatest strength.
Powerful. That's all I have to say. Powerful. Okay, so in the interest of time, but I do want to add this one last question. If you could time travel, would you go to the past or would you go to the future, and why?
Oh, I think I'd want to travel to the future. And I think the reason being is around my curiosity and that aspect of learning. You can learn from the past, but you've experienced it. It's already a lived experience. Obviously, you want to live in the moment because you never know when you have a future moment. But the future allows the art of the possible. It allows you to be innovative. It allows you to see things that don't exist already. And so I think I would travel to the future. I think it would be interesting to be able to take those aspects of what you don't know and bring back to implement or to have as part of yourself.
I like the art of the possible. That was amazing. So I really want to thank you because it's about that time. And time well spent because you provided a lot of really good nuggets. And I'd like to ask if anyone would like to contact you or follow your work, what's the best way for them to do so?
So the best way to contact or follow would be through my email, which would be mark.kaestner@ball.com, because I'm happy to connect with fellow colleagues to learn more, to discuss, to benchmark, to just build our own learning or build on our own learnings and to learn from each other and to understand our experiences. So that would be great.
Thank you, Mark, again for your time. This has truly been an informative session.
Awesome. Thank you.
So right now I'll say, until next time, thanks for listening to another episode of the Practitioner-Scholar, a Penn Chief Learning Officer podcast.